Right, now what we've done, we've got the, obviously the two halves gone, we've got that filler running down. It's had a couple of coats, to be honest, and what I've done, I've sanded and done the bits like that, but I can show you a little bit more around this seam. So what we've done, the front end, we've put on now. Now the reason for not doing it in the halves, as in having both halves together, then putting them in, and then instead of just putting it along and then just shoving the front on, is because of this. Because when we come along with the intakes, which we've put together, obviously you can see it covers most of this area up, so there's not a lot of point worrying about this seam. Now if it was the case where this intake was perhaps back here and you could see it, then I would have glued both the halves together and then brought both sides of them together. So if you like, the front part and the rear together, glued them and then brought the two halves together. But because it's covered, as we can see here, there's not a lot of point worrying about it. Now put some tape on. This is purely to protect the panel line detail that's really on the top and on the bottom. And as I say, we've had to do quite a lot of sanding and filling to get this nice and smooth along this belly. But that's one of those things we can live with. Now because it's quite deep, what we're going to do, we're going to use some of my homebrew, which I've had around for a while now. All this is green putty. In this case it's Squadron. It's a medium, your standard type of filler. Now you see it's in here and it's probably turned pretty hard to sort of normal putty, if you like. So it's quite thick and quite gooey. But what we can do, if we just get a little bit of spare tape, okay, and if we just pop that down here, okay, and we'll just get a lump of this out, like so. Then what I've got here is an older paint stirrer. It's got a flat blade onto it. Then what we can do, we can actually pick up the little bit we need on here like that, and literally we can just push it in the edge and just go along and fill it in quite precisely, quite sharply in like here. Now obviously you don't really need to do down by this intake section, but we're going to do it anyway. But where we get little holes and lumps, okay, and because we're pulling it towards the tape, we're not too worried about where it goes, because obviously that's all going to be cleaned up. So we're just going to scoop it forward. Okay, let's get another roll of it, and same where you get holes, you can go along. Now this is going to take a little bit longer to dry than normal glue, than normal putty. Okay, but what it enables us to do is to keep the area quite clean. Okay, so it's quite a gap, so we're just going to go all the way around like this. And because it's a little bit wetter than normal putty, it enables us to work it in a little bit better. Now the trouble with using self-made putty, so literally all this is goes in there and I mix it with a little bit of cellulose thinners. So any type of cellulose thinners you like, I've got one here which is designed for sort of airbrushing and things like that. It's quite a nice one to use. It's quite, smells a bit and all the rest of it, but it does what it needs. Okay, so what we do is just get another little bit out of here, but you can make it a little bit wetter than perhaps you normally would. So what we're going to do is just going to come across the top section, quite a bit up here admittedly, because it's quite noticeable. So in some cases, as I say, I know I like to use pre-thinned fillers and things like that, but in some days you just need good old-fashioned thicker filler. But the thing is, if you use it from the tube, I'll just get some on the go here. If we use it from the tube, it just doesn't work in quite nicely. So by mixing it with a little bit of thinners, you can do. So if I just show you whilst that's drying, I know it's somewhat the wrong way round of showing you. But we got here just a normal paint pot, okay? We're just going to come along with a little bit of normal putty, okay? And then all we do, Make sure your lids are on. It stops them all flying out. Then we just take some thinners. As I say, you can use this. I've got one open at the moment. It's just some airbrush, technically cleaner, but it's a lacquer. Okay, a little bit. So all we do, just dribble it on the surface. Okay, come along with an old brush. He's trying to find an older brush. Can't find an older brush, so it's going to have to be a newish brush. But all you do is just mix it together. So you can probably see on the close-up, it just works together. And as you can see, just break it all up, and it will turn to a very wet, watery mixture. So obviously, you know, that's too wet at the moment to use, so you could add more putty to it, or the other way is, of course, just let it dry. This stuff, because it's chemical based, it will dry very, very quickly. Because this is cellulose or lacquer thinner, it will dry quite quickly and go along. Then what you can do as well, another little trick, let me just clean this up a little bit, get that off the brush. What you can do is use a cotton bud. Okay, that's why I like using this one. Okay, so we just get some thinners on the bud, like this. Okay, just move those out of the way. Come along with your model. Now this is one of those ones you've got to be very quick with, okay? And all you do is give it a gentle rub, and you'll take off all the excess filler. Now the thing is, you're also melting the plastic itself, so don't hang around any longer than is absolutely necessary. Let that dry. Obviously you left it in the recess. Now the thing you have to worry about doing it this way is that what happens is it will shrink. What happens is, as the actual putty is drying and the chemicals are coming out of it, it shrinks back and you get a little tiny dip in it. That's when you come along with something like a Mr. Surfacer, which we've seen me use before, and you can pop that on and take care of all of that. But what this does do is make it very neat, very, very tidy way of doing it all, and brings it up quite nice. So if you're doing something perhaps like in an intake, or a particular perhaps in somewhere that's very tight and you can't get into, doing it this way is absolutely great. The thing is, as soon as your cotton bud starts to dry out onto this plastic here, it will start to cut and drag, and it will make the surface of the plastic very, very rough, and if you've got any panel line detail around with it, it will destroy it and it will just wipe it all away. Great, as I said, for something like this. Not so good if you're going to be doing it with somewhere with lots and lots of detail around, because as I say, you will lose it. But it is quite handy if you've got in perhaps a wing root or something like that where you want to get in there, and you can literally just run this in and smooth it out. Intakes is another very good way of doing it as well. But there we go, that's that one, and it shows you doing it like that. As I say, it's quite a nice, easy, straightforward way of doing it all, and keeps clean up to sort of a minimum as well. So there we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to let that dry off. We'll come back, we're going to sand that up and tidy all those up. At the same time, we've also done the tail. We've put the tail together, very, very straightforward getting that in and everything else. So that one went together very, very nicely. And then obviously, as I say, we've seen these, we've done the intakes already. When these do go on, we are going to have to be doing a little bit of sanding and filling on here. Let's just grab this one. Okay, because we have got quite a nicely joint up the back here. There again, we're going to get in there, sand it, dry fit it, get in the best we can be, and then we can put them in. Once we've got those on, we can move on to getting the tail on, which is pretty straightforward. It's going to sit on top. The only thing is there is a bit of a gap, which you can see on the close-up, down the back. So as you can see down here, we've got a little gap running underneath there. So what I'm going to do is make a little shim of plastic card, which I'll show you in a minute, about getting that one in, to set that all up and get that in. Once we've got those bits on, we can really start working on the wing sections and getting them together, get these intakes on, get it all sanded, rescribed, and everything taken care of like that. Okay, so this nose section's been drying now, so what we've done is we just had a whip around with a thin sanding stick. So in this case, quite a coarse one. And then all we're doing is just leaning it up against the tape, and we can just work it around just like that. So what we've done here, we've taken off the large majority of it all, and we're quite happy how it is. So what we do now, we can just peel this off to see what we're left with. And with any luck, we'll be left with quite a nice basic line just running down there, which is pretty much as you'd expect. Now we've got a little bit of work to do at the top here just to blend that in, and obviously, you know, we know we're going to lose panel lines up there and everything else, so using a sort of medium finish sanding stick, we're just going to rub those two in, have a feel, see how it is. Okay, just going to blend those two in together. Hopefully we're doing okay. I'm just going to pop round, so we're avoiding that nice detail just in front. We can just sand them in, blend them in nicely. Hopefully we're being left. There's one down the bottom. Okay, then we're moving along to a finer sanding stick. I'm just going to wet it a little bit so we can see a little bit better what's going on. Hopefully we're going to be left with is just one little line. Something like that. And when you feel it, absolutely smooth, no problem at all. So we've got our finishing sanding sponge here. So we're just going to give that a one, and this will just get rid of all those nasty scratches that we've been making and give us a very nice feeling line there. Now there is a small little step, but that's something we'll take care of in a minute. So we're just going to come along to the other side here. Give that good old sand in. Blending in, very nice. Then as I say, we've got a little bit of work to do at the top. So we're just going to work our way through a few sanding sponges just to blend them in nicely. It's coming out one at the top here. There again, feels very nice and smooth. There's no obvious steps. We've got a little tiny step here. So what we're going to do is just going to work a sanding stick just in. And obviously with a variety of different grades, we've got the thin ones as well, which all come in very handy. So we've got like the blue one here, but we're going to go in with the light one, the white one. And then hopefully, there you go, it just takes them out nicely. Put those in just like that. Very nicely done. There we go. Same on the other side. There we go. Very happy how that is. Now, obviously, we're still going to have a little join there, so a nice little way. We're going to come along with our Mr. Surfacer, as we did down the spine and absolutely everywhere else on the model. So we'll just grab our brush. So we've got the Mr. Surfacer on the brush, and we're just going to paint that in. And really what this does is going to take care of any little shrinkage, any little problems. And yeah, we are going to have to come in and rescribe and things like that, but that's not too bad on this aircraft. It's nice, big, flat aircraft, so it's not going to be too much of a problem to do that. And there we go, that's that one done all the way around, just like that. So there again, we'll leave that off to one side to dry off. Now, you might remember me speaking about the actual tail and building up that bit of plasticard at the back. So what we've just got a strip of plasticard, as you can see. I use normal Tamiya extra thin glue, just come along and we just popped it on and glued it on the bottom. That's been drying now for the last sort of half hour, so now we can just snip it off just like so. And you can use scissors or you can use a knife. I like to use scissors just to start with, but all we're going to do is just doing this slightly backwards so you can see along the bottom and just tidying it all up. Just like so. And then obviously you can use like a knife like we'll do here, and we're just going to follow it along the main panel line, the actual tail itself, and using it as like a guide, just roughly. We're not going to be pulling in there too tight because we don't want to cut into the tail as we did just there a fraction, but we're just using it along just to trim up. Okay, same thing again, we're going to come in with a thin old sanding stick and we're just going to blend it into the same width as the tail itself, so we don't have any standy outfits. Got a little bit on the back, so we just trim up that back area as well. Tidy up those. And as I say, and then coming in with our sanding stick, get a slightly stronger one here. We can just blend it in. And there we go. Now we've got a bit of a step up this leading edge, so what we're going to do is we're going to sand that in now. So we use a normal type of sanding stick. So what we'll do, we're just going to blend that in a little bit. Okay, then we can, obviously we'll be a bit careful, we can come along with the section here, and then this will sit in, and we can get an idea of how it is. And if you can see on the old close-up, that does give us now no gap at the back at all. We've got a small one running underneath, but it takes care of that gap an absolute treat. So there we go, that's taken care of that. It's just the right thickness, very happy with that. By the time we glue that in, it won't be a problem at all, and that loses it. But that's a quick way of putting in a little shim like that. Obviously it still just needs to be tidied up just a little bit, just to make sure you don't have any bits sticking out, but it's just a quick, easy way of doing that. So we just sand that in a little bit more. So we're all happy how that is. That's it. And there we go. So that does it. Nice little shim. Come along. Straight in there now. We can glue that down in position, let it go hard, and we can get in there with any fillers and glues and anything else we want to do in there just to make that a little bit nicer. But remember, just dry fit it in there all the time. If you think it's not looking right, just give it a bit of a sand like that, just to blend it all in. Come back, fit it. That's better. That's even better. Now we're taking it off a little bit like that, and it does it. Nice fit, everything else. So this can be drying at the front here. We can get that down into place and we're away. Same thing as we're doing with the intakes. We've got a little bit of filler on the go here. Just sand that out because this one had a little bit of a gap in it where I had overdone it slightly. So we can just come in. As I say, and there we go, that's a far nicer joint. Same thing again, going to put on a little bit of Mr. Surfacer just onto these areas, but I'm going to wait until it's all on. So what we can do, once we got those done, we can just fit these on, let them dry off, take care of these seams just the same way as we've done here and everywhere else. Okay, we can get the tail on, and in the meantime, what we're going to do now is work on the wing sections, because we need the wings to go in before we can put all the bits that bolt onto the front here, and then we move on. Okay, so as you can see, we're a bit of a mess here, to be totally honest, and we've moved on a little bit, and we're sort of in between all the bits and pieces. So if we can show you what we've got up to. First of all, what we've done is put the wing section together. Now this wing section, as you can see here, we're going to do it with the flaps deployed. Now it doesn't show you about having the flaps and slats up, but it doesn't take too much to actually put them into the closed position. Just going to need a little bit of sanding and filling of the various parts, but we're going to have them out as part of the instructions. But equally, you could have them back in the swept position as well. It is a bit of personal choice with that. That said, what we've basically done here, if we're moving through, we've put the tail on. Now the tail itself, as I said, there was that gap at the back, which I did show you. And we filled that in now, as you can probably see on the close-up there, that's all done. Now the thing was, you do get a little bit of, when you put the glue down, you get, best way to describe, little pinprick holes in the glue perhaps as it's going down there and things like that. So one way to get around that, I put down some normal Tamiya tape. We've come along with our Mr. Surfacer, we've used the 1000 and we've literally just brushed it down in that line. Now hopefully, moment of truth, if we peel this away now, what we should get is quite a nice clean filler job. There we go, down in that area, and as you can see now we've got no pinpricks. It's a nice smooth, very nice finish down there and right the way to the rear as well, because there was a small gap there. But one of those things, let it sit and dry. I did this one just before literally going to bed, put that down. By the morning it totally dry. If you'd knocked it or wobbled it, it would have caused a little bit of a problem. But as you can see there, both sides absolutely done. Lovely. Got a little bit of filler work to go up there and get that one done. Now what we've also done is, you can see here, we've put on the side areas, these wing roots. Now there again, the bottom one goes up and goes on and can be fitted in and glued into place. Make sure you open up the holes underneath that as well. There's 2 holes to go through because we've got a little pylon to go on there. So we've got those in like that, and then literally what we're going to do, we're going to come along and then simply we're going to fit our wing on top. Now obviously we've got the gear cogs in between both, act somewhat like this, so we've got the swing wing mechanism. Okay, and then what we're going to do, opened up the holes on this one as well, and then what will happen is this one will come underneath. So let's try to do this, and there we go, we can get in there and get that fitted in. Best to have the wings in the outward position, and what we try and do is get this in as best as we can. So that's why I've got the rubber band here. It's what I did to the other side. We get this in and it just pulls this entire area in, and then by using some pegs and a little bit of manipulation, and to be honest what I did, put it down like this, okay, and then we've got under here and we pushed up, and what it does is just bring this gap together just a little bit down here, takes care of that, and then once you undo it, obviously you'll get the natural droop to the wings, but it makes a nice seam line there. But a little bit of test fitting and things like that does go a long way to make that a nice seam and goes together. So once you've got that bit done, what we can do is, you can probably see underneath here, we've put on a few of the little bits. So what we've done here, we've got the little targeting pod, goes on the front. Simple job, that's a clear piece of plastic that's in there, which is one of the parts, painted blue on the inside, so it gives us that blue effect. What we'll do, we'll mask that up afterwards, glued into place. These strafes go down, admittedly I had to open up the holes on there just a little bit. Nice centre weapons thing, which gets rid of that horrible seam down the middle there, and 2 little ones towards the rear. Down the back here, I've actually re-scribed and re-riveted this entire area, because obviously we have obliterated a lot of it by doing them. And then obviously we've got this little dome on here at the back, that one's in as well. So what we can do now, once we've got that wing section in place and we're all happy, we can then re-scribe this top area. Now we've spoken about scribing on other tutorials and videos, so I'm just going to run through it with you lightly. I tend to use these are flexible scribing templates, and obviously you get different scales and different sizes and various things in them. And then I'm just grabbing the other bits and pieces. What we actually have, we've got a needle, and they say a bit of a spring on this, and then that way it gives you a nice line as you pull through it and all the rest of it. And then we've got a P cutter. Now a P cutter is ideal for something like this because it's nice long lines and we can just go along. When you're using something like photo etch stuff like this, best to feel it and make sure there's none of the little tabs that come off. And to be honest, there's a little one here. This side is the smooth side, and what it is, when this stuff was all together and you had multiples of these, if we just get them like this, they were all linked together like so. And then what happens is, obviously then they're taken apart in the factory and then packaged. Thing is, you get little tabs on them that stick up, so you come along when you're rescribing and you think, oh, this is going nicely, and you click it and then you shoot off. So we don't want that. So what we're going to do, we just lay this on. Okay, and I'm just going to literally just run this lightly down, pulling backwards, not pushing downwards. Okay, in like that, and it just pops in a little line just like so. Okay, so we just do this one here. So what we do, pop it on the line first so you know where it is. Gentle little pulls, okay, there's the line up like that, and then we're going to come along and put the cross one in. One there. One there, and one up here. Okay, now there's 2 ways. Obviously we can still see the rivets in here, but the trouble with them is that, you know, quite frankly, they are hundreds of them. So what you can do, you can use a riveting wheel like this. This is the cheap, nice £5 Trumpeter one. Now, check your rivet size. What you can do, you can come along and you can put your blade up onto where the rivet holes are already and make sure you've got the right gauge. If not, you can simply change out the wheels for different scales of rivets. To be honest, I've already done it. We've got this one here, which is exactly the same scale as what we need, and they're running around about 1 mil apart. Okay, the thing is, if you use something like a piece of photo etch, you might run up onto the top of it, which isn't a good thing. So what you need is something just a little bit thicker. Now for that, you could use something like a sanding stick and run along the side of it, but the trouble is there again, you know, you've got to allow for the width of it and everything else. So you can do that a little bit. So if we just turn that round, you can come along, okay, and then put your wheel exactly where you want it, come along, hold it into place, okay, and then just go back and forth a few times, and because you're running in the same hole, it should give you a nice line of rivets like that. To be honest, the ones going across, I'm going to do them with a needle. So all we're going to do is, you can see where they are on the real thing, left over from when we were doing, and we can just come along and just push in the needle. Where there's any filler, just be careful how you push and don't push quite as hard. Okay, and this is a long, laborious job that I'm only going to do for these ones running across this way. For the ones running down, I'm actually going to come along and do them this way. So what we'll do, we just do these here. So we're just going to line this up with them nicely, have a like down, okay, and do them just like that, and that way we can put in our row of rivets just like that. And say the more you run up and down, as long as you keep it nice and smooth, it will just go in the same holes, and obviously the more passes you do, the more it will put down. Or as I said, if time is on your side, you can come along with a needle, okay, and just do them by hand and pop them in by hand as you go, which is probably a very long and laborious job, but in some ways you'll get a nicer finish because you can tell how far you're pushing in with every single rivet. We're only talking about this area up here. Obviously for the underside I use the riveting wheel because it's a lot quicker. It's not going to be as spot on and as crisp, but it'll give us a nice overall effect, something like that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get this other wing glued on like that. I'm going to go around, I'm going to re-rivet all these areas. I'm going to put on all the little lumps and bumps and aerials and things like that. We've got little scoops, intakes and things like that, which are going to sit on up here and cover up things. We've got these tiny little leading edge, which have got radar warning receivers on them. They're going to go on the front like this. Take care of that, and we can generally go around, tidy it up, and then for the first time we can get some paint on this, see how it's looking, make sure we've got no sink marks or any joins and gaps which are looking a little bit nasty. If they are, then we can come back, get some more filler on them and take care of it.